Welcome everyone back to a brand new edition of Virtue and Vice right here on the BigVitoBrand.com, except Robbie Vice is currently out tending to some personal issues, taking his place for this special episode, which I would also eventually air on WrestlingWithWrestling.com for Andre Corbeil and NoDQ.com for Aaron Rift. Back once again with me, Big Vito LaGrasso. What's up, man?
Yeah. The upgrade to the show. And it didn't cost us a dime. All right. How's everybody? How's everybody doing? Virtue, how the hell are you, my brother? It's been a long time. I mean, how you making out with this virus going around? How's Cleveland doing? You cleaning up your act down there?
Well, I mean, I'm not a first responder, but I'm on the front lines for my job. So I do have to go out every day, but they're taking temperatures. I'm taking care of myself, keeping everything clean. I got gloves, I got masks, I got Purell, I got sanitizer. So we're just trying to get through this thing. Of course, taking care of my parents, not trying to be around them too much.
Right.
It's crazy times, man. And guess what? Vince McMahon doesn't even stop for a virus, which is our main part of the video today. We're going to be talking about WrestleMania. But before we do that, how's everything going with you during this pandemic?
Well, this pandemic is definitely taking a toll. I mean, everybody's on lockdown here in Florida. The golf course activities are on a close. The sun is still out. The pools are closed. But Miss Noelle and I are making the best of it. She's on quarantine, and even stronger to quarantine than most people because she had a stroke and she has asthma, so she's real susceptible to get sick. So we're taking all the precautions and everything, and I'm doing my thing in the community to make sure everybody's safe, so everything else is good. Trying to stay healthy, and as always, here with you doing this, my favorite time, just talking wrestling with some good people and having a good conversation is always enjoyable. So let's get the show on the road. I'm gonna let you take it from here. I mean, I know I'm the brand, but You're the man with the plan right now. So go ahead.
So Vince McMahon could not cancel WrestleMania. Now, of course, he didn't have it at Tampa in the stadium, but he decided to go through with it with TV tapings, having these wrestlers travel. Some of them didn't work because they didn't want to get sick like Roman Reigns. But as we talk right now, Vito, WrestleMania took place, at least some version of it, 2 nights on the network. And I do want to go over some of the key matches and things that happened. But before we do that, what's your take on Vince McMahon? And I think I know what this might be, proceeding with this during the coronavirus outbreak.
Guys, I got to tell you, if Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, NFL football, every major sport, the UFC just canceled an event, if everybody else can care for their athletes, so can Vince McMahon. You know, what people fail to realize is that when you have a big venue like this, you have an insurance policy for an act of God. This was an act of God. He didn't lose money, people. He didn't lose anything, right? What he did was he put the risk of his employees, his athletes, his entertainers, his staff, the ring crew, everybody, just so he could put on WrestleMania. And in turn, what happened? You got 2 different matches that were Matt Hardy style. You had an empty arena. You have 2 new champions that were very, I would say you look at them as transitional champions. And you have a WrestleMania card that kind of went and really didn't have the aura of WrestleMania. It wasn't nothing special. It looked like a regular empty building shows. There was no hype. There was no glitz. There was no glamour. I just think that he should have canceled it, and he should take care of his employees a lot better than what he does.
And of course, AEW is still taping shows and doing it too, but I don't want to talk about AEW this show. This is specifically about WrestleMania and some other topics later. So they proceed with 2 nights of this, and I knew this was going to happen, Vito. They were going to say when this was all done, this many people tuned in the 2 nights. We had this many social media interactions. They're trying to make this seem like historic. That's such a shame. Now, the matches happened. The workers did some of the work. So when I talk about some of these matches, I'm going to be critical of their passion, But at the same time, I do want to know from a wrestler's point of view, from your point of view, like if they just did it to collect the check or if they were fearful of the repercussions if they didn't. Strangely enough, Roman Reigns, who's been Vince McMahon's guy for the last 5 or 6 years, opted out of his match against Goldberg. Do you think he's going to be in the doghouse now with Vince, or will Vince give him a pass because he's one of Vince's golden boys and he did have leukemia? Like, what's your thought on Roman pulling out of the Goldberg match before we talk about anything else?
I think that Roman pulling out on his part was a good decision. On the company part and being a Vince guy, he's going to pay. So what does that mean he's going to pay? I am saying this now. Look at Job City for Roman Reigns and for him not to get a push, not for at least a year.
Now, that I'm interested to see how this plays out, and I won't disagree that that won't happen. But what will be interesting is if he does come back, when he comes back and he gets that push, it's almost like, holy crap, what does he have? What power does Roman have on Vince that no other wrestler has really ever had? Because McMahon loves burying people that don't work or get sick. So we're going to have to see what happens. So since we're talking about Roman, he didn't face Goldberg. Goldberg got to face, and you tell me this, what would you have done in this situation? Braun Strowman, who has been buried, who couldn't even kick out a 1F5. The last thing he ever did that was relevant was probably that little feud he had with Roman over the summer a couple of years ago and when he was in the Wyatt family. But when they tried to push him as a monster heel, he was exposed. He got winded in matches, blown up, and then he's now the Universal Champion. So what do you think on this? Now, the rumor is that Goldberg just didn't want to work during all of this, so he had to drop the title so he could go home and not do anything. I've also heard that, Goldberg was politicking not to lose the title. So I don't know what to believe here. What's your take on Strowman beating Goldberg in a squash, not a squash match, but it was like 3 minutes. They did all their power moves and it was over.
They needed somebody to fill the spot, somebody who can look the part of beating Goldberg. Were you going to get a 20-minute match? Absolutely not. They did the best possible thing they could do by making these guys do power move for power move, have them kick out so both of them look strong, with Strowman getting the up. Now, you could say it's an adrenaline rush. Roman had the upper hand because he was fighting Goldberg. You could play that out. As far as politicking, yes, I believe 150% Goldberg politic not to drop the belt to Strowman because his credibility is nothing. He has zero credibility. On the flip side, Goldberg's contract supposedly is up. He wasn't planning on working any matches, and Roman Reigns was supposed to be his last match. So it's like a 50-50. Do you spend a couple more $1 million for mediocrity, or do you cut your ties and let it go and say, okay, I did it, and that's it? So being the power brokers and the players, Vince probably said, listen, we're going to go in a different direction and use Strowman as a transitional champion.
Yep, I agree.
Transitional, people. He's going to get beat by somebody.
But you don't think Roman, because Roman bailed. So this is interesting. This is like the best storyline they got.
I assure you, he is going to get beat by either Brock Lesnar, who has a history of beating him.
I could see that.
I could see possibly the only one who really would go and beat him right now is Lesnar.
Yep.
That's really it. If you had to pick anybody else, there's nobody else who has any kind of credibility unless you stick Edge in a spot to be champion, which size-wise and everything else doesn't look right on paper. If you put Randy Orton there in that spot and he had an assist from Edge, now you're talking, you got something.
I mean, Strowman's a champ. Who would have thought? This is how weird this WrestleMania is. It just didn't feel like WrestleMania. Also on night one, like Charlotte Flair won the Royal Rumble, Vito. Who in the right mind thought this was a great storyline to have an NXT minor league champion challenge the winner of the Royal Rumble, and she accepts. Like, Charlotte should have went right for Becky. If they weren't going to do that, they should have had someone else win the Royal Rumble. What's your thought on Charlotte becoming the NXT champion? Are they trying to make this feel like a brand now instead of a minor league? Is that what they're trying to do here?
They need ratings for the AEW. What better way to do it than to do it as, having Charlotte Flair, their most recognizable women's champion, the most recognizable women's female wrestler they have, okay? So if you have a go, and if anybody remembers when the 24/7 title came back, I said they should have made this a TV title which is defended on all brands. And what are they going to do with this NXT title? They're going to defend it on Monday Night Raw, on SmackDown Friday nights, and they're going to do it on NXT. So she's going to be working her ass off, not only to put over NXT, but to represent the belt and make it worthy of this grand exposure.
So yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. This is their way to try to boost up NXT on Wednesday nights by taking one of their titles, putting it on Charlotte, who's been around, Ric Flair's daughter, trying to compete a little bit. Because I mean, granted, they're fighting over a niche crowd on Wednesday night, but it's ironic that Charlotte won the title at WrestleMania. She wasn't even on this tape show they did for NXT this past Wednesday, but NXT barely beat AEW in the ratings. So we'll see how that plays out.
And what better way to boost the ratings on NXT if you have Charlotte Flair and if you have advertised that Ric Flair is going to be on? People will tune in. I guarantee if they advertise Ric Flair on the show, they get 1 million viewers.
They should. Now, you know what else happened? What's your thoughts on Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins? This was one of those Mania matches that had nothing on the line. Seth Rollins is this Monday Night Messiah heel character, and this was supposed to be Kevin Owens' moment. Now, the way they did this match, Vito, it ended in DQ, but then it started back up, and it basically was Owens just basically annihilating Rollins and getting his spot where he did the big dive off the top of whatever that was behind the announce booth. What'd you think about this? Did you catch any highlights from it?
I caught the match, and I thought that if they were going to do a straight up match where Owens was going over, they should have ended it on the Titantron in the first segment of this, not to do the second part. And this way, if he ended it with going to the extreme and going all more, beating out, our boy there, I just think that, they kind of, it lost its luster and it didn't put him over quite as strong. But he still went over, but it went with a hitch.
Yep. Yeah. And it was like, I was like, they're going to end this in a DQ on a tape WrestleMania. What the hell's going on? But he had to get his big spot, right? Because that's what the fans want. And it's funny because they didn't even have people there, but they still wanted to get that dive, the holy shit moment. Nobody's chanting it because only people that are watching are people at home. But because Vince McMahon wants to make highlights, they all signed off on this stuff because this is supposed to be a historic WrestleMania. Now, here's the big thing from night one. We're not going to talk about every match that happened, right? Because there was a lot of filler matches. Forget about it. The Boneyard match was the main event of night one. It's that Matt Hardy Broken Universe. We can even go all the way back to Vince Russo booking, I think, Vampiro and Sting in a graveyard match in WCW. I like this stuff. I know it can't be done all the time, right? But the cinematic wrestling, there was a film crew there, Jeremy Borash, there was a photo of him standing there, a lot of creative input, 8 hours of editing, and I thought it worked pretty well. What did you think of this? This is what I'm interested in because I don't know if you're going to like it, if you like or hate it. What do you think?
I think if you're going to utilize The Undertaker, being he's not the Undertaker of 10, 15 years ago, where he could do all the great things that we all remember in WrestleMania, this is the best way to hide his flaws in not being able to wrestle and bump and get up and do things. Granted, he came with the American Badass, came on a motorcycle as a Boneyard match. What would you have liked to see The Undertaker come? Maybe an appearance by Kane. It's in a graveyard. Yeah, okay. They made the Undertaker look like he could fight 25 guys, which I think he knocked down 25 guys.
The Druids,
I
one
mean,
punch each.
yeah, one punch. I mean, one punch for everybody, and everybody died. So that was a little unrealistic. But the concept of the match is not to expose the Undertaker,
Yeah.
make it cinematic, make it exciting till the end. You kind of had the feeling going in, it's the Undertaker's match. He's going to win.
Yeah.
But I think for a one-off, this was a good match. And I think it was something beneficial for WrestleMania on the whole. And a lot of people online were saying, this or that. One match doesn't make WrestleMania. Okay?
Yeah.
Was it a good match? Absolutely. Very well done.
I thought AJ Styles surprised me because he's that wrestler, right? He needs a ring and a crowd. He does all of his spots, his moves. I'm kind of glad that he got through this. Now, granted, 8 hours with editing involved, anybody probably could look good. But I thought AJ surprised me in this. But again, maybe it was the production crew that made both guys look good. So I give this a thumbs up for sure.
Yeah, but you got to realize, probably this match they spent a ton of money on.
Yeah.
Time-wise, manpower-wise, set-wise. I think it took 5 days to build this. And all the manpower they used, all the hours they put to it. And that's not even including the editing and how they had to cut and redo and retape and do that. That's a lot of people they put in one place and a lot of things. That was like filming a movie, guys. So on that note, WWE gets a thumbs up on that match. It was very good. Not that Matt Hardy didn't come up with this a long time ago, or Vince Russo come up with this when he did the Sting and Vanderbilt, which I was there for. Yep. But guys, it is what it is. So be it.
So night one got praised. Everyone was excited to go into night two. They're like, oh my God, this was, in terms of social media, you know how I love to troll on Twitter at @NoDQ_virtue. So I was like, wow, people are excited about Vince McMahon has fooled everybody. He's given them WrestleMania. And then what happens? Night two happens. Now I'm watching it as subjectively as I can, looking at the work of the workers, not thinking why they're there, how Vince McMahon made them work or whatever. I saw a lot of hate all of a sudden. It's like the fans praised night one, and you know how it's a complaint culture, Vito. They couldn't do it again for night two. They had to turn, and here's what we got. Oh, that Cena Firefly Funhouse, Wyatt and Cena, that wasn't a match. Randy Orton and Edge went way too long. How could Orton dare hang Edge with the weight set like Benoit did? I can't believe what these fans were saying. And back to the last man standing match, oh, the commentary sucked. It was like calling a golf game. Vito, I know we're criticizing Vince McMahon for doing this, but the fact is it happened and these workers did it. They chose to travel, for most of them did. They put themselves potentially in harm's way. Look, did you catch the last man standing match with Orton and Edge? They built this up brilliantly on TV. Both of those guys, probably nothing to do with creative. They went ahead and did what they needed to do to build up their match. They got screwed because the coronavirus, it didn't happen in a stadium. They went 40 minutes, and I don't know if they stopped this last man standing match and edited it, but it came across as a 40-minute match. And yes, Vito, we know when you're getting up on a 10 count in a last man standing match, when you're climbing up a ladder in a ladder match, when you're going out of a cage, there's that slow drama. I thought this was excellent because I think Edge came back after a 9-year hiatus, didn't have to do this, and he still worked Orton some crazy stuff, a tour of the Performance Center. This was my favorite match of the weekend because I know Orton and Edge busted their asses. Why don't other fans look at it this way? And more importantly, what did you think of this match?
I think the match was a good back and forth match, and both guys worked their asses off, and they did a great job. Could it have been a little shorter? Absolutely, because it wasn't in front of fans. The hanging, and then people comparing it to Benoit with the weight set, over the top. But overall, when you had the last thing there with the, with the last chair shot and the way they ended it and Edge being emotional. I mean, hey, that's why I said Randy Orton could probably be the next champion. with a little help from Edge with a spear. So it kind of like sets up, Strowman to be a fall guy. And I think that, you got to commend both guys. They did good. They did the best they could in this situation. Right?
Yep.
Like I said, I think it was a little long, but they got the point across.
Yeah. And it's just, I know what they're probably thinking as they're doing these crazy spots and beating each other up, throwing each other into this, touring the performance. And they're probably like, in their heads as they're doing this, man, I wish we had the crowd here. But they still did it as best as they could, like you said, under the circumstances. And I just can't believe fans want to find things that they're not happy about in something like this. But whatever.
Because they're not happy because they're spoiled. Okay.
They are spoiled.
Kevin Owens jumping off the Titantron, come back with Edge and Randy Orton, and then they didn't jump high enough. They didn't do anything more risque. They didn't go to the top of the roof and throw each other off the performance center into a container.
Yep.
What else?
They didn't have Mauro Ranallo going, Mamma Mia! You're right. They are spoiled.
No, I mean, you can't please everybody. Hey, they still criticized Vince Russo for 20 years ago. And they're still talking about it. So what do you want?
Now, going back to night one, I forgot about this match. And it was kind of forgettable. Dude, Becky headlined WrestleMania last year, but you and I both know that's because Ronda Rousey was there. Okay?
Right.
She gets a semi-truck. Cool entrance, all right? That might have played off cool in Tampa in the stadium. But doing it at the Performance Center, this match with Shayna was flat. And Shayna was supposed to be the killer. And you know what Shayna said on the promo on Raw? The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Like Vince Russo says, it's like the stupid Wade Keller shit. Like, I thought this was, and not Shayna Baszler's fault, maybe not Becky's fault, but clearly not main event material. And would you agree that without Ronda Rousey, the women's division is not main event?
I'm going to tell you how they built this up, okay?
Let's do it.
And they built this chick up to be this monster. And after she got pinned, she sat in the corner instead of going berserk, tossing the referee up, beating the shit out of Becky Lynch, leaving her laying, holding the belt up, laying it on top of her, and go on to SummerSlam where they're going to have people. That's where they lost it. And for her to come back, plus, in my opinion, I didn't think she was all that good to begin with.
It worked in NXT, but you're right. Sometimes these indie niche wrestlers don't translate to the main roster with the casuals or the bigger audience, so to speak. But we talked about night one, and I literally forgot about that match until I had to remember it, and we had to go back. That speaks volumes. I literally forgot about that match.
And you know that Becky Lynch oversells her sell. And she plays it up so much that you look at her after a year of being a champion, you're like, I'm tired of this. All right, we get it. It's time for you to move on. With Ronda Rousey all of a sudden not coming back and ditching WWE, who do they put the title on? Where do they go? Charlotte winning one title, unless they try to SummerSlam, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, winner take all. They put all the belts on one woman, and off into the sunset they go.
Now, also on night one, they had the ladder match. Now, The Miz couldn't compete because he was sick or they sent him home. So they decided to take one participant from each tag team and have a triple threat ladder match. Like, what do you think about that? Morrison retained, right? He grabbed they were all playing tug of war, but he fell down and landed with the belts in his arm. But isn't that weird not to at least give Morrison a replacement partner? Because it's a tag team. Desperate times, I guess. Desperate measures.
They didn't want to out The Miz. And, The Miz has children. God forbid he brings his virus home. I mean, people forget. Yeah. And the Usos have children. And, I don't think Morrison has any kids. I don't think he's married. But you look at The Miz, he's got a brand new baby at home. Do you think he wants to take a risk of bringing home a virus? So, from what I understand is he opted out not to go. Okay. They had the three-way match because they had to do something to represent the three guys.
Yeah.
I think that the other two partners, I think a couple guys missed out on a payday, which everybody forgets. You get a payday from WrestleMania. Maybe not as big this year, but if you look at the match as a whole, it wasn't a bad match. It just didn't have the crowd there to give you the oohs and ahs.
Yeah.
But if you look at the workmanship in the match, those guys worked their asses off. They did a good job. You know, Morrison pulling it out so they can keep the titles on Morrison and The Miz. Smart idea.
Now, in another match on night one, they had Sami Zayn defend the Intercontinental title against Daniel Bryan. Boy, what did Daniel Bryan do? Did he piss somebody off? Like he had a pretty good gimmick going into WrestleMania last year. Is that vegan, earth hate? You know, he loved the earth, hated the fans that drank shit. And then he loses the Kofi Mania, and I'm telling you, what has Daniel Bryan done? They just don't do anything good with him.
What did he do that Roman just did that made them mad?
Was it the Saudi Arabia thing where
stayed home from Saudi Arabia?
So that's probably, yeah. And you know what? Since then, Daniel Bryan's
Job City. I told you this is the way to go. I've been saying this for as long as we've had this show on. I've been saying this for years. You don't go with the program, they're going to Job City you, okay? Look at Jinder Mahal, okay? That guy went from zero to hero, 6-month run. He finally became decent and good, and then they stripped him, but they stripped him bad because he's not even on TV anymore.
Yep. I know he was getting over an injury, but yeah, you're right. How do you go from zero to hero, champion to nothing again? Now, back to night two. So let's talk about the Firefly Funhouse segment. Now, I think if they would have promoted this as a Piper's Pit, like, you know how they would promote Piper's Pit for WrestleMania, stuff like that. The fans wouldn't have, it was like a 50-50. A lot of people loved it. Some people hated it because they were expecting a match. People wanted to see John Cena in there wrestling with Bray Wyatt. We've seen Bray Wyatt wrestle a lot, right? This gimmick for him is more about head games, mind games. What did you think about this? I don't call it a match, but I thought it was very creative. I felt that it was a history to John Cena, a tribute to John Cena, which in the end made Bray Wyatt look like, hey, it's Cena. Cena was in the past. This is my generation now. What did you think about this?
I think they did the same thing for The Undertaker they did for Cena. Cena hasn't wrestled. He's not in wrestling shape, right?
That's a good point. That's a great point. Nobody said that. Everyone's saying, oh, it's because Bray Wyatt gets hurt all the time or his gimmick's too goofy. Great point. Elaborate on that.
Okay, when you're not in wrestling shape, people, your timing is off, your wind is off, your cardio is off, your moves are not crisp. How do you stay out for a year and come back and think you're going to be the guy who's been practicing for 12 years straight and then come back and be in the ring and be that man again? Doesn't happen, people. I'm telling you, it doesn't happen. I watched it with the greats. I watched it with the best of them. So they did the next best thing, and they protected John Cena, where it didn't kill him losing a match and showing his rust, but they put over the Firefly like they should have did with Goldberg, okay? Because he should have beat Goldberg hands down. That should not have happened. But now they can go on with Bray Wyatt having a feather in his cap. I got rid of John Cena. I can get rid of you. So now it gives him some extra credibility. Was it something, people expected? No. Did everybody want to see a match this? But with no crowd and no timing and no room to train, this was the best scenario to get the point over and get Bray Wyatt over without hurting nobody.
Yeah, I liked it. And a lot of people liked it, but there were people out there that just have to be angry. Main event. The main event of both nights combined was Brock Lesnar dropping the WWE title to Drew McIntyre in a fairly quick match. What do you think here? Like you said, now maybe Brock's free of this title because he'll end up on SmackDown to beat Strowman. So what do you think this whole take was? Were they going to give it to Drew no matter what?
I think that, guys, I'm going to tell you what, Brock Lesnar is very vocal and he has a lot to say, and he speaks his mind. And when you're the top dog, you can say what you want and not be penalized. So in this case, with him having to come out of Canada, come across the border, come here. Now he has children too, which maybe people don't realize. You know, he's got kids at home. He's got a family. You know, Brock Lesnar, if you notice, was not in WrestleMania shape. Came in a little chunky, came in a little fat. But you talk about not wanting to do it. Did anybody notice that Paul Heyman did not introduce Brock Lesnar at the beginning of the match?
Yeah.
Right? Why did that happen? Because they're probably pissed off that they were doing the match. Not that Brock had any heat with Drew McIntyre or Paul didn't like him or didn't think he was a formidable opponent. Wrong place, wrong time, shouldn't have happened. And it was a quick match because Brock wanted it to be quick. But Brock Lesnar laid in the middle of the ring like a pro's pro because when Undertaker put him over, Undertaker laid there. And when you are a pro, you lay there so the guy can get over. Yes, granted, it was an empty building. It was an empty arena. The aura of winning a title is definitely gone. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You can't savor it because there's no cheers. You don't know when you're going to go back in front of a crowd. So, I mean, it was kind of like he won, but he didn't win.
That's a good point. Now, you think he'll be transitional?
Well, guys, they really don't have that many big guys to represent and look like heavyweight champs. And if the guy you're going to put in position again is Lesnar, now Lesnar lost to Goldberg, Lesnar got it back. When Brock beat Undertaker, Undertaker got it back at SummerSlam. So this is how it's going to go. You got to put the guy over so he can play in your yard. And if you don't play with guys, you don't make guys. Lesnar lost. Okay, but the big thing was, for how many years Brock Lesnar's been here at the company? 10? Just say 10.
Well, yeah, because he had all that time off. But yeah, if you add it up, about
say 10 years, guys, right? And for 9 3/4 of that time, Paul Heyman has introduced Brock Lesnar. Why didn't he introduce Brock Lesnar on this? And if you look at Heyman's face during the match, you could tell he was waiting for something to happen, or he had a panic look on his face. If you look at his face, he had a pissed off look. He was not happy. Take it for what it's worth.
Like he didn't know if Brock was going to do something?
You didn't know if he was going to do something, and not because Drew McIntyre's an asshole.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar was mad. Paul Heyman didn't do his thing. Both of them probably went out there pissed off. Yep. Brock Lesnar did do good business. He did put the guy over. No qualms about it. But it wasn't the right type of job he wanted to be known to do. If you were going to do this, you're doing it in a big arena.
Yeah, he wanted to be laying on his back, listening to the crowd, cheering for Drew, knowing he just made him. Absolutely. So that's the history. WrestleMania, they're going to be talking about this for years, right? All the social media are in action. Let's move on from this for a little bit. Cover some other topics. Ronda Rousey recently said if she comes back, she only wants to do part-time. Well, yeah. Who wouldn't want to do part-time? Part-timers get the most money, work the least dates, get the biggest matches. And of course, she says that she hates the fans because they complain about everything. Dude, and here's the thing. I like Ronda. She needed wrestling to kind of resurrect herself because what happened at the end of her UFC career. But, like, I just don't understand why these fans got to pick everything apart. Like, I was just reading Twitter before we came on here to record this, and someone's like, yeah, I thought one of the things Ronda always did in her matches, it was annoying, was when she pulled her shorts out of her crotch all the time. Like, what? Why are people criticizing shit like that? What's your thoughts on Rousey saying the fans are a-holes more or less, and she could do without them?
Well, just like we were talking about before the show, I said Ronda Rousey, as great an athlete and fighter as she is, and when she fought, she would go to the arena, do her thing, and go home. She only had to deal with it 4 times a year, 3 times a year. Dealing with this on an everyday basis is a skill, people. It's your life. She was not groomed for wrestling. She was not a wrestler. She was a fighter. Jumping into a wrestling business that had to deal with politics, that had to deal with much more travel, being on the road, living out of your suitcase, learning a whole different lifestyle. and you say, well, I made $5 to $10 million just for one match, and over here I'm making $5. So which one would you want to do? Would you want to go get your ass kicked for $3 million, or go 365 days and make the same $3 million?
Yeah, and have to do all that. That's true. And
She
and
she just didn't have she doesn't have tough skin.
yeah, and that's a thing too. You gotta, in wrestling school when you're training to be a wrestler, the old timers will say you need to have thick skin in this business. You'll have fans that say this and do this. You'll have promoters that say this and do this, but here, this is what you got to do. She probably didn't have any of that grooming at all. So I'll agree with you on that for sure. Now, what is your thought with the XFL closing?
I'll make a good point. I'll make a good point on this. All right.
Okay.
And it's something that everybody can relate to. Okay. There was a guy who became champion in WCW. Okay. And he took the worst backlash for being champion, and then came back and said, you know what? I want to change history. I am going to learn this business.
I know who you're
And
talking
he
about.
actually became decent and learned the game and the politics and everything. Talking about David Arquette.
Yep. Yep.
There's a guy and this, guys, for you people who don't know, this actually bothered him mentally for years. This was something in his mind, and like he could actually went to a psychiatrist. It bothered him emotionally away from, the game, the glitz, the movies, and everything.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm gonna show these people. I talked to him. I said, David, you don't know nobody. And he says, yeah, Vito, I do, because I came into your locker room and I became champion. And I was a laughing stock of people. The boys hated me. Everybody hated my guts. And it was like, no, I can understand that. But for him to go out and actually do it and learn the game and go train, kudos to him.
Yeah.
One day, maybe Ronda Rousey, being she's still young enough and can do it, maybe she will have the same passion. But that's the word you have to live by, is passion for something, guys. If you don't have it in you, it's not going to happen. If you have it in you, you will conquer all demons. Everybody look at Vince Russo, right? You could say whatever you want about Vince Russo. I mean, and everybody has said everything from Bischoff to Cornette to Pritchard to Jesus Christ. Is Vince unique with his bros and his concept and the way he looks at things? Yes. But there's a guy who I know because I broke the guy into business. He's one of my best friends. Is he a passionate guy about his work? Yes. Is he passionate about writing? Yes. What was he passionate about wrestling? Yes. Did he give everything he had to Vince McMahon, but it wasn't good enough? And he's, you look at it and say, okay, I gave my heart and soul. I gave it to the devil. The devil took it, threw it up like this, and threw it aside. Went to WCW, okay? He went and did his thing, and when you look back at results, he still had better ratings than what the guys had going forward.
Yep, got an article about it and breaks it down.
Yeah, goes to TNA. The hell with Russo, fuck him, he ruined WWE, ruined WCW. He's gonna come. Who has the highest ratings of anybody in all three companies? Vince Russo. Nobody brings up that point.
Yeah, and he in TNA, I mean, he helped Jarrett make TNA a promotion after WCW was bought. And it's still around as Impact today, not anywhere, but it was around for a very long time.
2.5 million people to watch. And what is Impact getting? 100,000?
Yep. Now, speaking of Russo, before we talk about the XFL, the Brawl for All is this hot topic because of that Vice Dark Side of the Ring. So what the hell are people pouring it all on Vince Russo for? Because he had an idea, because he wanted to see JBL get his ticket punched right in the face. Vince McMahon still said, let's do this. The boys who received $5,000 to do this as a purse per match or whatever it was, decided to do this. Why is Vince McMahon the villain 20 plus years later? What's your thoughts on this? Like, I thought the Brawl for All, was it great? Was it long lasting? No. But for the time, throwing something against the wall when you're in a ratings war, I don't see any problem with it, Vito. The boys participated in it. They didn't have to.
Guys, let me tell you something. I was there back during that time. Okay, they paid Dr. Death Steve Williams a shit ton of money to leave friggin' All Japan. I'm telling you, they picked him to win it. No way Doc is losing, right? Jim Ross, that's his boy, Oklahoma, the whole 9 yards. When he got knocked out, it was like they knocked out and they lost not only the 5,000, but the 500,000 they paid him to leave All Japan.
Yep.
Okay, so you talk about something that the boys wanted to participate in, because if you guys don't know, back then, if you were ribbing the boys and you were having a good time and egging each other on, that was the camaraderie with the guys. When you're with the guys, that was it. Ball busting, ribbing, joking, having a good time. But when you talk about guys getting their ass kicked or getting their lights punched out, knocked out, that was their thing. And if they were okay with it, they got $5,000. Okay? You know, nobody thinks they're going to get knocked out. Everybody thinks they're going to lose, but nobody thinks they're going to get knocked out.
Yeah, they maybe the points. Oh, I might lose in points, but
Exactly.
yeah.
So, and then when you get knocked out, you go back, and, you know, and it's just like the guy, you just got knocked the fuck out, right? All right, so that's what it was. It was a ruse for the boys. But then when you look at it, I mean, Barkon, you got to go fight Butterbean. It got to be.
They should have never made that. That's where it should have ended. He should have never faced Butterbean.
Right. But I mean, but it got to that point where something that was that bad and they made it into something. And then you're going to talk about it 20 years later, right?
Yeah.
Guys, listen, it's part of wrestling history. This is even like 1995. Skull Von Crush runs in the ring to help Eddie Gilbert defeat Jerry Lawler, Boogie Woogie Man, the Dream Machine. That's part of Memphis history. That's on YouTube. That's everything. That's a young Skull Von Crush running in there, getting his prime, doing his thing. In the biggest feud in Memphis history, what are you going to talk about now? How could they let a German have the key to the lock in a cave?
And it's a shame. Like, I don't know why, like, everything has to always come back on Russo. WCW 2000. Like, give it up, man. It's these narratives, the dirt sheets, guys like Meltzer and them spin on Russo because he was outside the box. He was more show entertainment versus the wrestling. And so all the people that want everything about wrestling to be a sport inside the squared circle, they're going to always continue to shit on people like Russo. And that's a shame. Is Russo perfect? No. But, like, I like Cornette. I like Russo. I don't want to hate anybody except Bischoff. But you know what I mean?
I'm going to put something out there that nobody has brought to light. And I want everybody to listen and listen good. When you think about who has made the most stars in the wrestling business. Now, everybody is a promoter and everybody has their little crew. Vince Russo, The Rock, Stone Cold, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read Vince's resume. I'm just going to give a couple names, okay? Go to WCW.
Oh, hey, Vince brought Jericho over before he left.
Right.
And Jericho, Bischoff treated Jericho like a jobber, mid-carder. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Go to WCW. Vince Russo, creative mind, takes a bunch of young guys. He creates the Mamalukes, who had the best vignettes and were the most popular tag team. Yep. He creates Vampiro. He pushed Billy Kidman. He did
Booker T, Champ.
Booker T, Champ. The Filthy Animals. What's the Army Crew? Erection. Hugh Morris. Chavo.
I can't remember what they were called, but I know, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? You're talking about Chuck Palumbo,
Jindrak O'Hare,
O'Hare, all these guys that went to the WWE, he made a new group of stars to play with.
Yep.
He went to TNA. AJ Styles wasn't born yet. What happened? AJ Styles and a whole bunch of other guys who got chances. So when you break it down, people, when you look at Vince, I'm not, and this is something I'm saying.
Oh, but we're kissing his ass, Vito. That's what they'll say. You're stating facts. Vince gave new stars an opportunity in a business where they didn't like new stars getting opportunities.
Exactly. So when you talk about it, when you talk about the Pritchards and Eric Bischoff and Jim Cornette and Jim Ross and friggin' Terry Taylor and this one and that one, when you bring them all down to, when you get it down to the nitty gritty, how many stars have those guys made compared to Vince Russo? I'm not blowing smoke in his ass because it's true if you look at the numbers and you look at the talents he helped. So guys, I know I'm Vince Russo's friend, and when he's stupid and a jerk, I do call him and I say, "You're being such an idiot, fool. What the hell's the matter with you? You sound stupid." I do tell him these things, but and I'm his buddy. But when he's left alone and he's not doing nothing, and then you bring up these points, guys.
Oh, he worked with Dustin Rhodes, Goldust. A lot of people fail to realize Vince was with WWE since like '94 because he was doing the magazine. He was helping wrestlers like Goldust writing promos for him before he was even on the writing team. I mean, look at Dustin, and a lot of these workers all vouched for Vince at one time or another. They all said he helped me be creatively free.
Exactly. So when people want to criticize, and how many times can you listen to Eric Bischoff come on and bury Vince Russo? How many times can you listen to friggin' Bruce Pritchard blow his horn about Vince Russo? How many times can you listen to Jim Cornette blow his horn about Vince Russo? It's tiring.
They were all replaced at some point by Vince Russo. And that's what they're bitter about.
All these guys have been fired by Vince McMahon. So what does that tell you? You're all replaceable. Shut the fuck up.
And Vince Russo was never fired. He left on his own accord. Never fired by Vince McMahon. That's amazing. Now, speaking of Vince McMahon, Vito, in closing, XFL, it's done. It's done. Now, the coronavirus hurt this thing. It sounds like it's done and it's not coming back. They just fired everybody today. Do you think this would have stuck around for next season if we didn't have this pandemic?
Yeah.
Or was this a one and done like the 2001?
No.
This is our last topic. What do you think?
I think it was going okay. At first, you're going to have an abundance of people. But I think the players that they had this time, I think it was more competitive. It was done on a better scale. I think it would have been, I think it would have lasted another season, and I think he would have did good, in my opinion.
And now it's no more, and I think that's kaput. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. I mean, right now it's hard to say even when any sports are going to happen again, live wrestling events. But I'm sure at some point this summer everything will be back to normal.
You want to know something? I gotta say this to everybody out there. Now, you're on my Facebook. You're on my Twitter. Okay? I post, people, the happiest stuff every single day. Hey, be positive. You don't have a good day.
Yes, you do. I can vouch for that. He does, people.
When you talk about wrestling, this sucks, guys. Don't you see it? I might get 15 likes on my positive posts. I'll get 175 I hate yous on the other one. The thread that goes through is unbelievable. Having a good day or talking about wrestling. There's more to life than wrestling, but I'm amazed at how much people pass your post. Don't press the like button. Hey, that was great of him to say. Am I a holy roller? No. Do I just say positive things all the time? Yes. Do I have the passion about wrestling anymore? No, I don't. I have my reasons, and hopefully I'll get some closure soon on these things. But, guys, if you want to live miserable, and the thing I always said about wrestling, what is it about wrestling? When you're in wrestling and you're going good, you're unhappy. You complain. When things are going shitty, what do? You complain. When you're sitting home and you have no work, what do? You complain. So what the fuck do you do in wrestling? You complain.
Yep.
And that's what you got out there, a bunch of complainers.
Yeah, that's a good point, Vito. Well, thank you for joining me, taking Robbie Vice's place. I mean, we're going to get this. This will be exclusive to thebigvitobrand.com this weekend, and then I'm going to get it up over on Andre's site and Aaron's site. So with that said, this was awesome. We got to do this more often. We got to bring you back.
No, I mean, since I gave you this big break at the Big Vito brand, you don't even call anymore. I have, God forbid, I ring your phone and it's, I get the voicemail. Listen, I can't take any Java calls. Sorry, brother.
I was selling our angle up here at the last indie show we did.
Yes.
No, anyway, that's my bad. I know. Trust me.
But I enjoy these shows, guys, and I enjoy doing this a lot. And this is one of my favorite things to do when I can talk with my buddies and talk wrestling and do this stuff. And I know there are a lot of people who enjoy me talking about wrestling. So I sent Aaron a message just so you guys know, and we're going to try to get the band back together so we can do this like we used to, and have maybe a 3-man or 4-man crew and do something positive for you people, have some good commentary on some subjects. So it's looking to make a comeback, and if it could be done around my schedule, which I appreciate the guys working, like on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we could tape. I will be all for it and do it because I know everybody likes it. Another thing, Virtue, you never sent me any message about my TikToks, man. What's going on with that?
I've been secretly watching them, and if I start marking out on your TikToks, then that's going to expose my heel gimmick. But anyway, you're supposed to do one to that song TikTok by
Which one?
whatever her name is, Kesha or whatever. I don't remember what her name is, but Noel will fill you in on that. There's a song called TikTok.
All right, song called TikTok.
It's from like 10 years ago. But yes, I'm sure you'll be doing one of those very soon.
No, I'm having a good time with the TikTok. And I said to my wife, we did this started 2 or 3 weeks ago. I said, watch, we're doing the TikToks every day. I said, every wrestler in town is going to start doing it. When you see Nia Jax, oh, what's this beauty mode? What does this do? Okay. I'm like, come on, man. And Stone Cold Steve Austin is on there too. He's down at his ranch doing TikTok.
You ain't gonna get me to TikTok though, but you do it for me. You do it on my behalf.
No, I'll do it on your because I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored.
So there you go, everybody. Go check out Big Vito. He's on Twitter at the Big Vito brand, and you can see all of that stuff there. Follow me on Twitter at NoDQ_Virtue. Go to my Facebook page, nodq.com/virtue. Vito's on Facebook. All I know is this was a great show, Vito. I love doing these shows, Virtue and Vice, on the BigVitoBrand.com and all my other channels as well. Anything in closing before we go off the air?
Yes, we have to get my favorite saying on. Erroneous. We're good.
Is wrestling cool today? Wait, wrestling is very cool today. And you would say erroneous on all counts. Wrestling is not cool today. So thank you, thebigvitobrand.com, nodq.com, wrestlingwithwrestling.com. That is the man, Big Vito LaGrasso, legend, former WCW hardcore champion and the tag team champion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Legend, and of course, just me, good old Virtue. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we will definitely do this again, so we will see you next time.